Hello, and welcome to this episode of Painting Happy Little Minis. I'm your host, Dave Taylor. I'm here alone today. Well, apart from Leona, who's running the switcher. We'll no doubt be talking with Leona later on. But Rick and Johnny are in Chicago for the Retailer Summit today, I think. And tomorrow they're heading to C2E2, which is the Chicago Comic and Entertainment Expo. Yes, got it right. Cool. So, yeah, just me today. So I'll be running the chat. I'll be painting. I'll be talking to you, doing all sorts of fun stuff. But because we decided on Tuesday that next week we're going to be painting up some Warhammer Underworld Shadespire, one of the latest sort of deck building board games from Games Workshop, I figured we'd get started early. I've gone ahead and primed up some of the minis. I think if we can go to the spinner, we'll be able to check out. Well, there we go. So this is Steelheart, who is the leader of the Stormcast Eternals warband. I've got him primed him in gold of the Retributor armor spray from Games Workshop, and the base I primed that in black with a Zenithal prime of white over the top. But we'll probably be leaving him on the spinner for most of the show because Rick will be painting these guys next week. I thought we'd give Rick the Stormcast Eternals because there are only 3 of them, so it'll be easier for him to finish, and they're all gold, which he'll love. So I'm going to be working on Garrick's Reavers, which are the Bloodborne, I think. Is that their wonderful title? Blood Reaver faction for Shadespire. So it's quite cool. So I'm going to sort of get stuck into painting these. We've got a lot of sort of exposed flesh and muscles and that sort of thing, and then plates of armor, big chains and weapons and that sort of thing. So I'll be working on this guy, but in Garrick's Reavers we also have some cool poses like this. This guy already, very gladiatorial kind of look. Here's Garrick himself, the leader of the Blood Reavers.
What's his name?
Garrick. I think Garrek. I think that's right. This guy, absolutely awesome. And this guy, he looks kind of angry, doesn't he? Yeah, ready for blood. So, yeah, we'll be working on those over the next few episodes. Should be a lot of fun. Let's have a look. Hey, Keith. Hey, Shah. How's it going? Obviously, if we look at the model, I've already started some work on this today. I thinned down a little bit of the Vallejo Game Color tan for the skin here. So when I thinned it down, it went well over the sort of the highlights, but because underneath here was a little bit dark, the primer was a little bit darker, I'm just going to use a sort of straight up tan there to sort of fill that in. And then, let's look at that guy. Done. I'm going to switch to a different brush to give me a little bit more control. So I've gone ahead and shared this on the Warhammer Underworld Shadespire group, but obviously I'm going to be painting for the rest of the hour. So anybody in the chat can share it to other groups. That would be fantastic. We would really appreciate that. What we're going to do now is take a little bit of Rin Flesh from the P3 range and mix those together to get a lighter shade. And I can start working on this. You can see up close there, this guy has a kind of a strange symbol on his chest. That's the symbol of Khorne, who was one of the gods, one of the chaos gods in the Warhammer universe. He is the blood of, the god of blood, or the blood god. He's all about death and destruction and mayhem. So it suits these gladiatorial fighters just fine. So, yeah, they jump in here.
I'm wondering if anyone in the chat has played Warhammer before.
Oh, yep. Any of the Warhammer games. So, it's been a pretty huge range of them over the years. Games Workshop's been around for quite a while, but I think it was 1983, Warhammer itself, Warhammer, the game of fantasy battles, was first released. So, these characters are from from the game Warhammer Underworlds, Shadespire, but that's set in the Warhammer Age of Sigmar sort of universe, which itself is set about, I think, about 400 years, 500 years after the last edition of Warhammer Fantasy Battles, which was 8th edition. So, I myself have not played any Warhammer Age of Sigmar, but I've played the hell out of Warhammer itself, Warhammer Fantasy Battles, over my years. And the funny thing is I haven't played Shadespire yet.
But you said that you play tested it?
I played a demo game of it. Yeah, I played a demo game at Gen Con last year with Phil Kelly, who's one of the Games Workshop game developers. And it was a lot of fun. It was very cool. It was, and the game itself is all about, you pick a faction to play with. From the box set, you've got either the Stormcast Eternals, who are the sort of shining champions in gold, or the Blood Reavers here. But when I say deck building, there are a bunch of cards that you can choose. You get to decide what goes into the deck that you bring to the game. From that, during the game, you'll be drawing those cards to determine your objectives during the game, what you need to achieve at the end of each turn, or different special effects cards or special ability cards that can boost things that your warriors can do. What else we got? Hey James, how's it going? Oh, and Josh from Mini Painting Studio says Shadespire is great, 10 out of 10. Have you painted any of the minis from it yet, Josh? I think you have, but let us know. And yeah, James, just me today. Rick and Johnny are off in Chicago. I tried to line up a couple of special guests, but sadly they sort of fell through. Hopefully next time. Oh, there we go. There's one of my other special guests that I would have called on, but Carrie is in the chat at the moment, but she's also in Chicago. She says, Rick and I will eat an extra plate for you. Awesome. Will there be a plate of which? Will there be a deep dish? Chicago deep dish pizza? Are you going to Portillo's for some Chicago beef, Italian beef? One or two. Yep. Yeah, that's right. For C2, E2 tomorrow, I think, and today is the Diamond Alliance or Diamond Retailer Summit that Rick and Carrie and Johnny will be at. So, yeah, we're going there. All alone, just myself and Leona.
Just the cool kids.
Pretty much. I like to think I didn't go because I was just in Chicago for Adepticon. So that's how I'm justifying it to myself, I guess. That and I
want to take you back.
Chicago.
Didn't want to take you back.
No, probably not. But it's that, and I don't know a lot about comics, so I probably would not have been as helpful as I would have liked. But next week, however, next Thursday evening, I get to fly to the UK to go to another show, to go to Salute, which is the largest wargaming show in the UK, which should be a lot of fun.
Are you going to be a guest there?
No. Basically, I'm going on behalf of the Nova Open Charitable Foundation that I'm the vice president of. Yeah, Leon and I were just talking about this just before the show. But yeah, we currently have another raffle running, and it's a historical miniatures raffle. So we've got a warband for the game Saga from Studio Tomahawk. Quite a popular one. And myself and Richard Rush have painted up a Viking warband that we're raffling off. And it's the opportunity to sort of start to spread the Nova Open Charitable Foundation brand across the pond. So I'm going to head over there and have some fun. Just noticed in the chat, James has said blood for the blood god, which is definitely one of the battle cries of the warriors of Khorne. Blood for the blood god, skulls for the throne. The skull throne. It's one of the cool things with Khorne. He cares not from where the blood comes. So he doesn't mind if it's his own warriors who are dying. In the game Shadespire, each of the fighters has their own sort of stat card, and they have at some point during the game they can become inspired, and different factions become inspired by different things. And the Garrick's Reavers warband that this guy's from, they become inspired when I think it's 3 or 4, might be 4 models die. Once 4 models are dead, it doesn't matter whether it's from their own side or from the enemy. And then they get to all sort of switch their cards to their inspired level stats, which is pretty neat. So with the painting here, I'm just I've started off with the tan from Vallejo Game Color, which is this one. Sort of thinned it down a little bit, ran it over all the musculature, and now I'm using some mixing in some Rin Flesh. Actually, now I'm right up to the sort of straight Rin Flesh for the highlights on the muscles, so I get these to really pop. And then after that, I can go in with some washes, some thin down paint for some extra shading under the different muscle parts, which I don't know the names of them, so I'll probably be getting those wrong. You can see here. So it looks like this guy has some pretty beefy abs in there, but he also has this big scar over them, which is the symbol of Khorne. And that's not Khorne, C-O-R-N, but K-H-O-R-N-E. Okay. How's that looking there? Is that
It looks good.
the it's kind of funny with the sort of all these muscles on the back. Lots of different there's places you can pick out right along the top.
Cliff Eater says, looking good.
Cool. Thanks, Cliff.
Also, this might be a silly question, but are they human?
Yeah, these guys are. So I guess technically. When Warhammer moved from Warhammer Fantasy Battles to the Warhammer Age of Sigmar sort of thing, essentially the world that the Warhammer world was exploded and is now exists as, I think it's 8 different mortal realms, each with their own different sort of approach and environment and that sort of thing. So I'm not exactly sure whether they could still be called sort of, still completely human, the inhabitants of these mortal realms, or something a little bit different, something enhanced. So, James was asking, what did I think of his Skaven warband? They look very cool, James. It's kind of funny. I mentioned I haven't played Shadespire yet at all, but I currently have all of the I have all the products for it, except for the Skaven warband. So it's kind of funny that that's the only one I don't have, which of course is the one that you've finished, the one that you've painted. But they look great. Yeah, so James posted a pic of those last night in the Painting Happy Little Minis Facebook group. So if you're not a member on there yet, head on over to Painting Happy Little Minis and request to join, and myself or Rick will add you in, or Leona, or possibly Johnny. I don't know, but yeah, come along and join us and show off your models and ask questions and provide advice. All sorts of stuff. Okay. I think he's looking pretty good there. What I'm going to do now is just enhance that that scar that he's got on him. So I'm going to pick it out with some of the Rin Flash. There, you can see I'm just taking that a little bit slowly, nice and neatly, to get that squared away.
James says, I don't have any of the dwarves.
You don't have the dwarves? They were my favorites. So, but yeah, that is funny. I played Warhammer Fantasy Battles for a long time. I started probably with 3rd edition, all the way up to 8th edition, and I've got loads and loads and loads of models for it. But still haven't played Age of Sigmar. But the Fire Slayer models, which are the so the dwarf warband for Shadespire, are all Fire Slayers, huge mohawks, big beards, no armor, and huge axes. That's what I've sort of chosen to sort of get into first for Shadespire, and we'll see if that leads me into Age of Sigmar, any Age of Sigmar gaming.
Are they short?
Hmm?
Are they short?
The dwarves?
Mm-hmm.
They are indeed. They compensate by having enormous mohawks, though, that are almost sort of as tall as they are. So just got out a bit of the cavalry brown from Vallejo and just thinning it down here so that I can run that along the edge of that or over that scar. Should really help that sort of pop that out. There we go. So you can see that coming to life there. There we go. Oh. So, waiting for a front shot.
Yeah. I'm going to try and get it so that we can get a front shot.
Cool. There we go. I'm going to put a little bit of this in his mouth as well. And then he's got a big leather collar on. So if I just run this around the edge there, it'll look like that collar has been rubbing against his skin. Okay. So there we go. Turning them the wrong way, of course. How's that look? People liking that? He's looking pretty good. Yeah. And the miniatures for this are absolutely incredible in that most of them are a two-part plastic model. So, well, they're all plastic, but I guess 3 parts if you include the base. So you have the base is one piece, and then this guy, I can't remember where he's split, but when they're assembled like this, you can't really tell. But yeah, absolutely incredible engineering on these miniatures. Give you a lot of sort of dynamic motion, and it's not all just sort of single plane kind of stuff. So, very cool. Oh, James is hoping to enter the Shadespire Store League this weekend. That's cool. Is that how they got that set up, James? Is that sort of you head in and you play sort of whoever's there, and they record the results? Is it going to be running over a few weeks, or how does that all work? I was saying to Leona before that this is kind of a new arena, I guess, for Games Workshop. It's the first time they've actually sort of set out to create a game that works really well in a competitive environment. I mean, people have been playing Warhammer and 40k tournaments for the longest time, but Games Workshop has always said that those games aren't designed as competitive games. So there may be things that end up broken in them. But Shadespire is one that they've very definitely said, this is a competitive game. This is designed for tournament play. So at Adepticon last weekend, they had had one of the Shadespire Grand Clashes, which is one of their large format tournaments, where they had, I think there were a couple of hundred people who were playing actually. So it's pretty amazing to see. Oh, James says he's not sure how the league is going to work, but it's official. Their prize support and everything. It's something that Games Workshop's taking a leaf out of the book of a couple of other companies that do this sort of thing. A couple of other games like this, so Magic. Well, obviously Magic isn't a miniatures-based game, it's a card game. This is, there's a lot of similarities here. So there we go. What do we think? Finished? All done. No, okay. Now I'll have to move on to everything else. I think what I'll do first is some of these armor plates. Most of the plates are, well, when I say some of these, looks like we've only got a couple to work with. But this plate on the shoulder here is going to be, I'm going to paint that red. And probably, and then the trim along the edge will be brass. And these plates on his thighs, you can see here with the, I think I'll just do those as brass as well. The reason I mentioned brass there is that brass is one of the colors of corn, red and brass and bone. So with this white prime, this red goes on nice and smoothly, but is also super bright.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's really bright.
Yeah, super vibrant there. So we'll basically put this on, let it dry, and then probably shade it down a little bit to help it match sort of the rest of the tone of the model. But there we go. So for that I just used Mephiston red. James says, thanks to Drew at 1 Inch Heroes, he worked in a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle reference into his Skaven. So was that Splinter? One of your models is... Hey Tim, how's it going? So we've got that there. So while that's drying, I'll jump back in and paint a bunch of the other stuff black. So I think his pants are going to be black, and the boots are going to be like a dark brown leather. So I'm going to start by making those boots black. So from here, actually, everything sort of below the waist on this guy I can paint black.
Dave, I have a question for you.
Sure.
What makes you keep going back to the Warhammer world? Like, what makes it really captivating for you?
For me, I don't know. It's a good question. I think when we were doing a lot of playing in the sort of the original Warhammer world for Fantasy Battle, it was a really interesting mix of high fantasy and low fantasy. So you had elves and dragons and demons as sort of your high fantasy aspects. But I was always attracted to the low fantasy sort of thing. So most of the gaming that I do, the armies that I choose for the gaming that I do are kind of the everyman kind of army. I really enjoy the idea of like humanity against the fantastic. So rather than picking to do an army of orcs or army of elves, I like to do an army of humans that has to work together to fight against the things that are bigger than them, tougher than them, stronger than them, that sort of thing. So central to the Warhammer world is the Empire, which is kind of very loosely based on sort of Renaissance Germany. So that's where most of the humans in the world live. And so yeah, I've painted up, over the years I've painted up probably 1,000 or so Empire models. But yeah, I just like the idea of all these people to defeat the the demons or the elves or whatever. They have to work together to do that. So that's sort of the main thing that I really enjoyed about Warhammer. Warhammer Age of Sigmar is sort of set up a little bit differently. There's less of the low fantasy and much more of the high fantasy. So it's probably why I haven't really jumped back into it too much. But it's why Shadespire can be a nice little sort of dabble in it, and give me a chance to learn some more of the new background and find my place in it.
That's cool.
Yeah. Of course, at the same time, I still got other models, so I can still play Warhammer Fantasy. But I got a lot of friends who really enjoy it as well. So, yeah. Look at there. Oh, okay, James. I'll go and check out that photo again so I can find the exact reference to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. But thanks for joining us. Have a good day. I think one of the other things with the Empire is that they had a lot of, it was basically the Empire was broken up into provinces, and each province had their own color scheme. And so you could build an army, either just an army from a province, so stick with one color scheme, or you could sort of mix and match. So your army had a bit of variety to it. But lots of opportunities for doing some cool paint jobs. But in general, with Warhammer and Warhammer 40,000, there's always been an invitation to create. So there's a lot of there's a very strong storylines, but there's also a lot of room within the world to sort of move around and do your own thing. So one of the favorite things that I've seen people doing recently on the Warhammer Underworld Shadespire Facebook group is they'll post pictures of ways that they've converted their Shadespire miniatures. So something like
That's cool.
Yeah, like something like the Steel Hearts Champions warband. There's only 3 models in it, and so converting them doesn't take a lot of time. Painting them up certainly doesn't take a lot of time. But there are people who have essentially created models that have a very similar silhouette, but they've made them out of Nurgle models or sort of other chaos type creatures, and they'll still use them as with the stats of Steel Hearts Champions, but the models are their own. They're unique to them. And Games Workshop themselves are also celebrating that by sort of picking out these really cool warbands that people have converted and painted and showing them on their website and their Facebook page and things like that, which is really cool. Okay, so I've almost got all of these other parts painted. You can see how quickly it all can come together.
So you gave it a black undercoat, but you're going to make those leg panels brass? How are you going to do that?
Yeah, so the basically just went through and painted everything that I didn't want to be skin or this bright red, black. The reason, main reason for that is that when you're painting metallics, sometimes they can appear a little bit thin because they have depending on sort of which metallics you use. Actually, what I'm going to start here is with one of Rick's favorite, tinny tin, and a little bit of brassy brass. Is because of the way you get that sort of metallic shine in there is little tiny flakes. But when you paint those, sometimes they can sort of separate a little bit and you get a lot of show through. Okay. So if I painted that over a white undercoat, that white might show through. Whereas if I paint it over a black, if the black shows through, that's sort of just fine. You don't need to worry about that too much. So you can see here. And also around the edges, you can, if you're careful when you're painting the panels, you leave a little bit of black around the edge and do what's called black lining. So it helps those panels sort of stand out from the color that's next to them.
Cool.
And that's easier to do if you've got a black undercoat there. So you can see that nice and simple. On the other side, do the same sort of thing. But yeah, the painting some nice sort of shiny metallics against a dark background. Or in this case, they'll be right up against the dark pants, the black pants. So they'll pop quite well against it.
Will you put highlights on those pants?
On the pants, yeah, yep. And I'll probably just go with a gray, mixing a gray into the black. I'll come back here for a sec, and because I want to put the tinny tin and the brassy brass on the edge of this shoulder pauldron. Let's go along and paint that black first.
Timothy says, you'd be surprised that the old Nuln stuff are still really fun in AOS, so Age of Sigmar.
Okay.
I run them with the Stormcast Eternals occasionally.
Right, yep. Yeah, it's one of those things. I think, so Age of Sigmar has been around for coming up on 3 years now, I think. 3 years this summer. And it's there are definitely a lot of people who are really excited by it now. So I think it's taken a little bit of time to get its legs under it, but it's doing very well. Again, sort of to mention Adepticon, the guy who has been running the Age of Sigmar tournaments there for the last few years. In 2016, I think he had about 32 people signed up. Maybe a few more, maybe 40. And then last year, 2017, there were 100 people playing in the tournament. And this year, I think they had 190 people signed up.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, for the sort of the championships event. So that's a definite indicator that that people are coming around to it, which is good. I think I'm going to make this this bracer here brass as well. But yeah, the for the Shadespire itself, you've got the you can see on the table here we've got the core box set. That gives you the Garrick's Reavers set that I'm painting up at the moment, the Steelheart's Champions, which are the oh, my mind's gone blank. Stormcast Eternal sort of warband. Then you get all of the cards you need to play the game, sort of the generic cards, the cards that are specific to those two factions. You get the dice, and you get the board sections that you play on. On top of that, you can also get different warbands to add to it, and those warbands have the miniatures. They have warband-specific cards, sort of objective cards and special ability cards, or special play cards. And they also have some generic cards in there that anybody else can use. So buying that extra $30, $35 box set for the Skaven warband, for example, is still going to get you something if you play the Stormcast Eternals or the Blood Reavers or something like that. So Games Workshop's made the price points quite reasonable. So the idea of collecting all of it isn't sort of particularly outlandish at all.
Are you going to?
Probably. I try not to get started on collecting sort of anything that's going to be too crazy, but mainly because the completionist in me wants to sort of see it all collected. But as I said, at $35 a warband, it's not too not sort of too out of the question. And they've been releasing them in pairs. So the first two that were released were Orcs, an Orc warband, or Auric warband, and a Skeleton warband. And probably about a month or two, they released the Dwarves and the Skaven. And then I think next week, possibly even this weekend, they've got another Khorne warrior kind of warband coming out. It's one that's going to have guys in more armor, more heavily armored, and another Stormcast Eternal warband, but where Steelheart's champions are focused on combat, close combat. These new ones are going to be focused on ranged attacks.
That's cool.
So, yeah, giving a completely different play style. The way the game's set up, it isn't set up to sort of mix and match those. So you won't be able to take sort of this guy and put him in with the new Khorne warband. They're all very sort of distinctly separate. No doubt for game balance. But one of the other cool things that they've done is for Age of Sigmar, they've created sort of unit cards to take these warbands into your Age of Sigmar armies, which is kind of fun. So there we go. How's that looking?
Looks good.
Looking pretty good?
Looks good.
Excellent. Okay. I might just jump in and do the boots and that. Oh, wrong one. There we go. So one of my favorites, charred brown, and there we go.
I feel like you love that charred brown and that red color.
Yeah.
Those are your two favorite colors.
Oh, cavalry brown.
Yep.
That's one of my new favorite colors. But charred brown's like a perpetual favorite.
You like brown.
Browns, yep. They're a great base point for a lot of things. They're excellent sort of neutral, warm neutral color as well. So regardless of what the rest of your color scheme is, you can almost always squeeze in a brown somewhere. But yeah. Okay. Hmm? No, that sound is, yeah. Not sure if anybody else can hear that, but there's somebody hammering away nearby. Obviously, we forgot to remind them that there'd be recording going on today. It's funny, speaking of noises, I was chatting with a friend, doing an interview for a podcast on Monday afternoon, and then all of a sudden I heard this noise, and I thought, oh, that's my daughter Emily, Lucy, sorry. She's just turned on the Hexbug Nano, and she's playing her game Bugs in the Kitchen. But so I went upstairs to say, hey, you kind of need to turn that off for a little bit. I'm recording an interview, and she wasn't playing at all. It was actually a jackhammer out in the street.
Oh no!
So sadly, I couldn't go out and tell them to stop. But there we go. So I'm painting this over the black so that I can leave some of the black in the shadows. Start giving the depth almost immediately. But that. And
Josh
of course,
asks, which podcast were you on?
oh, I was on Skirmish Supremacy podcast, talking with Nick. I think that episode went out on either Monday night or Tuesday. But yeah, it's one of my friends, Nick, he lives down in Atlanta. He and another friend, Tim, have a podcast called Skirmish Supremacy, and they talk about skirmish games, primarily. They talk about other things, but yeah, the focus is definitely on cool skirmish games that are around. I think now that I've got most of this on, one of the things I was going to say is I've gone and painted the belt brown as well, because everybody knows that your belt should match your shoes, even in the Warhammer world.
Even when you're fighting.
Yep, even when you're covered in blood, you should your belt should match your shoes. So actually what I'm going to do now is dig around in my box for another. Hope I put it in here. Okay, yep. I'm going to do something here that might seem a little bit odd. I think I've done it before on the show, but I'll show you anyway, if I can get the paint to come out of the paint pot. There we go. Is rather than mixing a lighter brown into the charred brown to highlight the leather boots, I'm going to grab a smaller brush as well. And mix a bit of, in this case it is, where'd I put it? Elf Skin Tone from the Vallejo model color range. So using that to lighten it up a bit for the highlights. But one of the things that you might sometimes see on sort of heavily scuffed shoes or boots or jackets, that sort of thing, is in those areas where it's scuffed along the edges, rather than it looking grey, It actually looks a bit like sort of a pale skin or Caucasian skin sort of underneath there. So by mixing in a pale skin tone to that brown, you can get a nice sort of scuffed leather look on the edges there. You just dab it a little bit to get some texture there.
Jesse Mason says, you were also on an episode of The Command Hand.
Yeah, yep, I was. Chatting to my friend John Andrew. That's his new Star Wars Legion podcast, The Command Hand, which is cool. He had me on because he'd seen me on the show here, painting some Star Wars Legion models. So it was really cool to get to chat to John and talk about that, which was neat.
And talk about the giant ATST.
The mighty ATST, yeah. It's huge. I think it's massive. I think I've decided for my Star Wars Legion stuff that I'm actually going to put them on the transparent bases. The acrylic bases, like we were talking about one episode.
Nice.
Yeah. It's like, I wouldn't normally do that for any of my other armies, but because this is a completely new game and completely sort of fresh start, I can do something I wouldn't usually try. So, kind of excited about it. I talked to one of my friends, Thomas, who has a laser cutter, and get him to cut me some bases that kind of match the size and shape of the vehicle bases. So I can get those little cutouts and the arcs, the firing arcs and that sort of thing. Would be good.
Does that mean you'll focus a lot on terrain and building terrain?
Not really. I think I'll focus on it, but I think then I can feel comfortable about playing on any surface. Yeah.
That makes sense.
It can look good. Of course, it might mean that I get sort of really excited and I end up buying like 2 or 3 different gaming mats and put together a desert table and a what do you call it? Like a forest table and that sort of thing. On the Star Wars Legion Terrain Facebook page, there's been some great stuff sort of being shown recently. I think yesterday somebody showed a picture of their Scarif table, which looks absolutely fantastic. They did a magnificent job of that. So how do those boots look? They look all right now?
They look good.
Yep. You can see that sort of scuffing idea. Push that back up there. Okay. Actually, I just realized that his belt kind of loops around at the front. So in there and paint that. So what we have to make sure we do is that we don't tell Rick that we've sort of started like this already, and just surprise him with it. There we go. And now for the silvers. Reaching into the box of paint again.
The mighty box.
The mighty box, yep. Cool. It's kind of funny that I still have that. It's like the first episode that I was on, Painting Happy Little Minis. It's like, oh, yeah, I better grab all my paints. What's the closest box I have? And it was that one. So, and still now, what, 5 months later?
Hey man, that's real life.
Yep. It works just fine. So now I'm just painting this fairly quickly over the chain, so that I can leave some of the black in the crevices there. And those chain links. So. Oh, okay. There we go. So we can see that there. Okay. So I'm going to paint all of this silver first, and I'll put a wash over it, and then I can decide which if there are any areas that I want to switch up a little bit. I'm probably also going to give this a metal haft there, just because it would be less likely to break. I've got a metal one. And because this guy is attached to his axe, having his axe break is the last thing he'd want. Okay. So I'm just getting the high sign from the owner telling me we've got 2 minutes left to go. So this has been the start of our Shadespire painting coverage. So we've got probably 2 episodes next week where we'll do some more. Rick's going to be working on the gold guys, the Stormcast Eternals, and I'll be continuing to work on these, the Garrix Reavers. I'll switch up and put this guy on the spinner, and make Leon to run around. Yay! So while we're doing that, thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks for sharing the cast around. We've got more Shadespire coming your way next week, which will be a lot of fun. Maybe even next week we'd film a game. I'll have to talk to Rick about that. But yeah, so looking good. Shadespire and all its expansions are currently available in your local friendly game store. They should have copies of it. But if not, they can always order it from Alliance. But yeah, I think the normal stuff that we usually go over at the end of the show here is head down to your local store, become part of the community, jump in, talk to people about painting, talk to people about gaming, teach what you know, learn what you can. But yeah, just become involved and have a lot of fun doing it. You can become involved with our community on Facebook by joining the Painting Happy Little Minis Facebook group. So just like it sort of says in the title, just head to that page. And I think that might be about it. I think we're done for this broadcast. Hooray! So thanks very much. I've been Dave, and we'll see you at the game store.
Thanks for watching Painting Happy Little Minis. If you liked it, leave a like and a comment below, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any new content.